Okay, this is my fifth time making this video. I keep trying to get it shorter because I know I tend to be very long-winded. So this time what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to show you just the steps first, just the steps that you need to know very first. You can watch the very first part of the video, and if that's all you want to watch, you get to get all the information that you need. Boom, 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 boom. Do this, this, and this, this, and then you're done. So, okay. So you want to export out a DAE out of Blender because your dev kit gave you a Blender file only, or if the DAEs and FBXs that they gave you are not working quite right, and they do give you a Blender file, and so you're going to want to export out your own DAE to import into Maya and MayaStar. So if you're going to do that, you need Avastar, number one. You cannot export out of Blender using the built-in Collada DAE exporter that comes with Blender. I've tried a million different ways. I was never been able to figure out how to get it to work. So just do yourself a favor, spend the money, get Avastar. There'll be other dev kits down the road that you'll need to do this on sooner or later, to get the DAE. And so, believe me, it's a good investment. So, okay, so first thing, picking out which mesh is going to be exported out. If you've never used Blender before, the little eyeball means whether or not you can see it or not. The little arrow here is whether it's locked or not, whether you can actually select it or not. See, I can click on it and it highlights, but no little orange circle appears over this little symbol. But if I turn it on like that and click on it, I get a little orange symbol, and you notice I get it highlighted in here. Okay. I have one mesh selected. It's going to be the only mesh that is exported out. If you want to export out multiple meshes all at once, you can. Simply turn on the eyeball and the little arrow here that unlocks it so that you can select it. So I'll do like 4 and I'll show you. Blender's outliner, which is this is what it is, it's the outliner, works a little differently than Maya. In Maya, if I were to come down here and hold down the Shift key and click on this one, it would select everything in between as well. But Blender's a little different. It just selects, you Shift select the different pieces that you want. So if I wanted that one and then that one, now they're all selected. They all have this little weird orange symbol indicating that they're selected. Okay. So, and then if you want to deselect them, you just hold down the Shift key again and click on them. If you only want to click one at a time, you can click, just left mouse click on it. Okay. Now, theoretically, this should be the only one that is exported out. But just to be on the safe side, I make the others invisible and make sure that they're not set. You don't have to see, these are, but they're not selected. But that's okay. So anyway, so it is, whichever one has the orange around it is the one that's going to be exported. Because here's some other meshes. This little symbol here means mesh. There's the mesh eyeballs, and they're all visible and have that they're not locked. Okay. So this is the only one that's selected. The other thing you really, really, really need to know, and it's super important, is I just found this out yesterday, is that above the appearance sliders are a couple of little buttons. One is the SL shape, default shape. That's the shape that's created in your inventory when you create a brand new shape in Second Life. And then there's the neutral shape. What that means is the bones are in their neutral bone positions. Those positions are defined by your avatar skeleton XML file, which is in every viewer, whether it's Firestorm, Singularity, or Linden Labs default viewer. They all use the same file. It's called avatar skeleton XML file, and it's on your computer. They all use the same one so that all the bones are all defined exactly the same. And the definition determines their positions, rotations, and scales, and pivot points. And those are the neutral. And every mesh body designer that I have spoken to so far, which is like 4 or 5, they all say that they're using the neutral bone positions, or the in MayaStar it's called the well, I'll show you where it is in MayaStar. Okay, so you want to export out in the neutral bone position. Now watch the mesh change when I do that. Or did I already click on it before? There it is. Okay, so there's this second life default shape when you create it in a new shape in your inventory. And then when you click here, the neutral shape, watch her arms get shorter, her head gets bigger, and I believe her butt changes sizes. And see the arm lengths. These indicate that they've been changed. So when you click on the SL default shape, these are the default settings, slider settings. Okay, but we want the neutral. Okay, so once it goes back into the neutral shape, you can export out your mesh, and you just go File, Export. You don't want to use the Collada default DAE. Like I said, that doesn't work. I've never been able to get it to work, no matter what options I've tried to get it to work in Maya or MayaStar. I can get it into Maya, but it's facing the wrong way. It's, you know, it's a lot of pain in the butt. It's facing the wrong way, and no matter what I do to try to turn it and this and that to try to get it to work, I've never been able to get it to work. So you want to use the Collada Avastar DAE. Okay, I'm going to go to desktop. I'm going to name this video body 1. Oh, I turn on use bind pose. I don't think it really matters if that's on or not, but I always have it on. And then these are just the default settings. Okay, and now I'll export it out as video body 1. Double click on it. I had exported it out earlier in an earlier video. Okay, so it's now set. So I'm going to go back over to Maya. Here I am in Maya. DevKit import. And I suggest using this one here. You can do this one here as well with it. Doesn't matter. But we're going to do import DAE. Video body 1. And as you see, it comes in messed up, so you do the DevKit prepper. That fixes it. And it looks fine. And now we're going to MayaStarize it. And it's always safest to do female bento, because that's going to make sure it gets all the bones. But if you had a mesh that had fingers, you know, hands and fingers, it's probably most likely rigged to the bento fingers, and so you'd want to do bento female. Slink, I know, didn't use any of the bento bones. She's just using straight fitted mesh bones, which were in the original skeleton. So I could do female original if I wanted to, but we'll just stick with bento. Doesn't matter. Bento is always safe. Although you end up with wings and a tail. Oh, I guess you didn't end up with wings and a tail. Okay. So here is the mesh. Let me move this out of the way. And I already had the female appearance editor open. So if we go to breast size, we see it works just fine. Everything is working fine. Okay, so reset skeleton, that says the same thing. It puts all the bones into their neutral bone positions. So that resets the skeleton. Mesh default does do the same thing. There is a reason. I forget what the reason is for having. Oh, reset skeleton. Believe it's this. Okay, reset. Oh, I guess it doesn't. I think under some circumstances, reset skeleton and mesh default do slightly two different things, but basically, mesh default resets all the bones back to their normal bone position. Same thing with reset skeleton. There is a reason. I just can't remember what the reason is for adding a reset skeleton button. Oh, wait a minute. Is this why? Okay. No, it will reset this. Reset skeleton puts it back in the T-pose, while reset skeleton here, mesh, just resets the scales. That's why. Those are what the two differences do. Is reset mesh resets all the scales back to the default, but reset skeleton actually rotates the bones back into their default. neutral positions. That's the difference between the two. Okay, so reset skeleton does the same thing as that other button does, and then SL default shape does like the other one. The first button I showed you that showed you the shape that is created when you create a brand new shape in your inventory, that's this one. Reset skeleton here resets it back to the neutral bone positions. Okay, so now pay close attention. Notice, you know, she has a slight bulge here, a little tiny bulge, but not much. It's a normal bulge, and underneath her breast is pretty straight. Okay, so I'm going to go back into Blender. Now, you could stop the video at this point. That's all you need to know to export out a shape in the neutral shape so that when you bring it into Maya, it's going to be correct and everything. If you want to hang on, I'm going to go into a more detailed explanation of everything that's going on. So that's this part. So if all you wanted to know is how to export out a neutral shape correctly so that when you bring it into Maya, everything is fine, you can stop watching here. But if you want to know a more detailed information of what's actually going on and the weird sort of thing that I found out about Avastar. Now, newer versions of Avastar may not do this, but older Avastar versions does do this. And if a body was uploaded with some slider settings set to it, even if the mesh body designer says, oh no, I rigged it to the neutral bone settings. But if they uploaded their body that they're selling with some slider settings set on, like the SL default shape, well, then that's the shape that you have to rig your mesh clothing to. Is to that, I believe. I'm going to do some experiments, but so this is going to go into more detail now from here on out into the video to let you know what's kind of going on so that you'll have a better understanding. Okay, so back to Blender. Okay, so here we are back in Blender, and I'm going to make her have a belly size of 100. Takes a second for it to kick in. There's her belly. Okay, now if we export out this with this slider setting set, you know, we already have our thing set, the mesh shape will be baked to this shape, and I'll show you. So we'll go File, Export, Collada Avastar. We have all the same settings we used before. Go to Desktop. We'll do Video Body 2. Okay. Go back to Maya. Okay, here we are back in Maya. Import DAE. There's Video Body 2. Dev Kit Prepper. MayaStar Eyes. Female Bento. MayaStar Eyes. Okay, now from a distance it looks pretty good, but let's look at her from the side. She's got a much pointier little belly bulge, and underneath her breasts, look at here. That's because it's a different shape. You know, we can apply, oh, that's breast, sorry. I was doing a belly. Okay. We can make her belly 100%, just like in the other one, and it would look exactly like it does. But it's as if it was rigged to a custom bone position with a custom bone scale. And that's not good. So it may look okay, and this may actually even be okay to copy the weights from, but if you were trying to make it something that was skin tight, like a bikini, you know, you'd be like, you'd have this bulge here and this here, and then when you went to wear it in Second Life, it wouldn't be there, and you'd be like, hey, it's not the same, what's going on? So that's what's going on. That's a possibility of what's going on. Is that now if they in Blender had it accidentally set to Second Life default shape, not neutral shape, but the default shape, and uploaded that, then you have a problem. Then I think you would have to export out with that same setting as a DAE and then bring it into Maya and rig to its shape. And then you would probably want to rig it to where you click on that, you make that the bind pose, custom bind pose. Custom bind pose, and then create your mesh and then rig to it in that custom bind pose. And so, but don't upload it to Second Life with the bind pose. Use custom bone positions on. Let the mesh body designer, if they had chose that, to use that. But anyway, but I'm pretty sure that's what you'd have to do. So the only way to really know for sure if everything is 100% is to make a bodysuit, because the mesh body, depending on the TOS of the dev kit, you may not have the right to upload this mesh body to see if it is actually accurate. But you can create your own wetsuit or bodysuit in Marvelous Designer, and then copy the weights over, make sure it's skin tight, copy the weight over, and then upload it to Second Life and wear it and see if it looks, it should be identical or near identical. But if you start to see stuff in the shoulders are always tricky. You always also want to rig to the bind pose the mesh was when it was originally rigged to, or the bind pose of the mesh. So if it was like that, then you'd want to make your clothes fit like that. I don't know what happens if you change the rotation. No, it should be the bind pose. And the bind pose you can tell just by detaching the skin. You can see this is a T pose. Wait a minute, which one did I? Whoa, wait a second. Oh yeah, this is the one with the bulge out. This is with the bigger belly, right? Okay, yeah, this is the one with the bigger belly. There we go. Yeah. This is the one with the bigger belly that we did. You would theoretically, whoops, that's the breast. Keep grabbing the breast. You see B, and I don't read the rest of the word. Belly. So theoretically, to make your mesh clothing fit this avatar perfectly, you would have to find the slider setting, and the way you'd find the slider setting is you would let's put this back to default. Okay, is you would detach the skin. What I would do is I'd detach the skin. I'd rename the mesh. Duplicate. Name it whatever you want, doesn't matter. Copy it to your clipboard. So I'm going to copy it to the clipboard. I copied it to the clipboard. Now I'm going to Control Z back to where it's rigged. And then I would paste. So we just pasted that big one in there. I would click there, hold the shift key down, click there, make it 1. Let's create a blend. Okay, now this is trying to figure out what the slider setting is. If you can't go in Blender and find out what the slider setting is, say they just give you a DAE, they don't give you a Blender file, you open it up in Maya, you detach the skin, you do just what I did. I make it a blend so it's easier to see, and then I come in here and I start playing with the that looks like it's definitely the belly. Oh, 100% belly slider. And then everything else looks like it's pretty good. Although the neck, why is the neck? Let's see. Neck thickness, default. There you go. Okay, so you get that in there. Everything else looks pretty close. Yeah, everything else looks pretty close. Oh no. I swear I just changed that. Oh, that's right, because we changed it to SL shape. Anyway, you have to play with the sliders until you find the settings. There we go. Okay, there we go. So what I did was I hit reset skeleton, and then I just made the belly. Good. Okay, that's the way it should have been. Okay. So, and we see it has that nice flicker pattern over the whole thing. I don't know why this upper arm right here always isn't quite what I think it should be. But as long as it has a nice, smooth, even flicker pattern over the whole thing, it should be good. Okay, so then that tells us that if we want to make mesh that will fit this avatar perfectly, we have to find the slider settings, custom pose, create bind pose. Now this is the bind pose. And now I could create mesh to fit this avatar, and it should fit perfectly. Or it will fit perfectly here. Now if it doesn't fit perfectly the avatar in Second Life, that means that wasn't the bind pose and the bone positions or slider settings for that avatar. Like I said, it all depends on the quality of the dev kit. I have no control over the dev kit if it's correct or not. It all depends on, did they export out their DAEs and FBX correctly, whatever program they're using. Blender is a little more tricky, especially with Avastar, if they're doing it with Avastar to create their DAEs. And it's all on them. You know, you can try to figure out, like I said, from what everybody's told me, they all use the neutral bone positions to do their initial rigging too. But if they change their slider settings before they exported out their DAE, before they uploaded it Second Life, it's going to be different. It's not really going to be the default bone positions are the bone positions that you need to rig to, or the shape of the avatar, because the avatar changes shape when you do that, or mesh. So it really, really depends. Now, Avastar may have fixed that. It's not necessarily that Avastar had done something wrong when they did it so that the shape gets baked into it. They may have meant to do that. They may have taken that out of newer versions of Avastar. I'm using a fairly old version of Avastar. And I'm using an old version of Blender. Or fairly old. It's it's not the newest version of Blender. So it may be different. So if you're going to do this, make the belly 100%, export it out, do exactly what I seen. See if it did actually bake that shape, if it still does with Avastar. If it does, then you know you got to do these things. Hopefully most mesh designers, like I said, they rigged their original mesh to the neutral bone positions and they export it out with the neutral bone positions when they uploaded their final mesh that they were going to sell their bodies in Second Life with. But like I said, it's so easy. You can see how easy it is just to accidentally have one slider setting set. You know, or they're using the SL default shape, but then they had gone in there and they made her waist a little bit smaller with the slider, just playing around with it, and forgot that they changed that slider, and then they exported out their DAE for a second life, and now that's the actual shape. And then when they made their dev kit, they reset the bones, the shapes, to the second life default shape at some point, forgetting that they had accidentally, not knowing they had accidentally uploaded their DAE for their body that they're selling with, say, a smaller waist slider applied. And they just don't know, you know, that they did it. So yeah, being a mesh body designer and creating a good dev kit that's accurate is difficult. It's difficult. And so it's easy to make a mistake, you know. So, okay, so hopefully, and I have verified this. I won't do it now because it came in really weird, but I was able to verify by exporting out okay, I'll do it. Okay, it'll be a little bit longer video. Okay, let's reset the skeleton. Let's get rid of this mesh. We know we don't need it anymore. Let's make this blend 1 and rename the mesh original. Okay, so it's named original. And now if I were to import, I had already exported out the shape correctly. So I'm going to import that shape correctly. And that was video 1. Whoops, there's 2 bind poses. Okay, so. Okay, to find the bind poses, turn off tags only. Come in here and either type in BIND, enter. For newer versions of Maya, for older versions of Maya, hold down the shift key and put an asterisk. That's a wild card. See, we have 2 bind poses. So we're going to delete one of the bind poses. Tags only object, do the dev kit prepper again, and we didn't get an error, but it comes in super tiny. The mesh is there. Don't know why. There is the mesh. I'm going to make it a little easier to see by, I don't know why the mesh is so tiny, but I'm going to MayaStar meter scale. Okay, so it's still tiny, but it's going to be big enough for you to see. Okay, so this white one is the original. Close this down. It's the original one. The darker gray one is the one we just imported. And if we turn on X-ray, you can see the difference in the shapes. This is the one that was exported correctly. This is the one that was exported with that huge belly. I don't know if this is going to work now. Okay, belly. Yep, okay. Now, when both are at the same exact slider settings, you can see they're identical. Let's turn off the X-ray. At least they're identical in the belly settings. But you see that they don't react the same, and they have a slightly different shape. How about the breasts? Yeah, the breasts seem to be pretty identical. They're so identical they're not even showing a flicker. So, But you can see the rest of the body doesn't quite react the same, you know. And if you were doing let's go to her butt size and see what happens if we make her butt bigger. Yeah, it doesn't quite move the same. It's not the same shape. It's more the belly area that, more than anything else, that doesn't move the same. So if you were doing a bikini or a really tight fitting piece of clothing and you could see it's going to be off. And you're like, why is it off? You know, you can see it's going to be off. And you're going to be like, what's going on here? So, okay. So it does really make a difference. You have to have the right slider setting set in Blender, whatever the slider setting was when they exported out their DAE for their mesh body in Second Life. And hopefully they had it set to neutral when they exported it out for their body in Second Life. That's what really matters. So now you know those things so that you can kind of hopefully help figure it out. Because they all tell me they use the neutral bone settings positions when they rigged their mesh. But it is possible that when they rigged their mesh, they had the bones accidentally set to Second Life default shape instead of the mesh shape. The actual neutral bone settings. So yeah, this is lots of fun trying to figure out to get it accurate. The tighter the clothing, the more accurate your dev kit really needs to be that you're rigging your clothing to. The looser the clothing, the more leeway you have. Okay, now the last thing I'll go over is, what do you do if they are using actual custom bone positions? Now, they all tell me they're not using custom bone positions, but to say in the future, somebody who doesn't really know what they're doing, they create a mesh body and they use custom bone positions and they did it in Blender, you know, how do you know? Well, you just open it up, the blend file, if they give it to you, export it out just as is, don't change anything, and import it into Maya. Now, when you import it into Maya to get those custom bone settings, how do you get them to import? Okay, that's the question. See, and I should probably make a separate video just for that. But if you've lasted this long, you can get this last one. Okay, so like I said, you just open up the file, don't change any settings, export it out as an Avastar DAE, you know, with the bind pose, ambulance, and then when you import into MayaStar, it's really important. Instead of importing this one, you have to import it with this one. So you activate one of those. We're going to activate the female bento. Now it might work with this one, but I'm not 100% sure. With this one, I know it works. It would work for sure if the DAE contains the actual custom bone positions. Okay, so after you've activated one of the female bentos avatars, you need to delete the bind pose. So you gotta come here, turn off DAGs only, come in here and go bind. I do star, you may not have to do it, you could just go bind, select the bind pose and hit delete. Okay, that means there's no bind pose in MayaStar anymore. And when you import the FBX DAE, or not the FBX, the DAE that you export it out, it comes in with its own bind pose, which hopefully contains the custom bone positions. So let's turn that off. And now everything should be fine. Let's see, torso. Awesome. And everything's fine. You could delete these bones that you don't want. And everything should still work just fine. MayaStar, go to bind pose. And everything's fine. So that's how you bring in a custom bone positions if the Blender file has those custom bones in it. And so yeah, it's a lot to go through. So okay, so that's this video. It's 36 minutes long, but at least the first 10 minutes you got to know. If you lasted this long, the first 10 minutes of the video has all the information that you really need if you just want to export out a good DAE out of Blender. So awesome. So we'll see you in the next video.